The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and we're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. And if I'm looking a little more purple today than normal, it's because our friends have asked us. It's National Epilepsy Awareness Day, and we're all supposed to be wearing purple. So I am proudly wearing purple to commemorate and to show solidarity with those of you who have children who suffer from seizures and have epilepsy. And I hope that you guys will write in and tell us if you're wearing purple today as well. We're going to be with you live for the next 2 hours talking about all topics having to do with autism and life when you or someone you love is on the autism spectrum. Whether you're a parent, teacher, practitioner, or you yourself are on the spectrum, we want to help you to have access to tools and experts and ideas that will help you to be the most productive in your day doing what you need to do. That's a subject that's very near and dear to my heart because I am a parent of a young man who is on the autism spectrum, diagnosed at the age of 2.5. He's now 9.5 and doing just wonderfully in completely included 4th grade and excelling. And he speaks, which was not something that we were sure was going to happen. And I know that all the progress that we have had has been as a result of good information that we got along the way. People who connected us with other people and said, here's what you need to do. Here's how you need to get that funded. Here's where you need to go to get this therapy. Here's how this will work. Here's the information that you have to go to this IEP. Because heaven knows, had I been left to my own devices, we would not be where we are today. And I'm 100% clear on that. And so I remind you all at the top of the show that while I'm not an expert in autism, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a nutritionist, I'm not a behavior analyst. I am not a BCBA, a board-certified behavior analyst. I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist. I'm none of those things, but I am a parent and I care deeply about what you guys have going on in your life. We're all a part of this beautiful community, and I feel very privileged and lucky to be able to sit here and provide you with information, and I'd love to know what it is you want to know more about. So write to us and let us know the kinds of topics that you want to cover, and please feel free to ask questions of anybody that we have here in the studio. We have a very exciting week this week leading up into Autism Awareness Month, which promises to be, I'm trying to keep my head on, right? I'm going to take my hair off. We're going to be shaving my head on April 8th, but I'm trying to keep my head on. I'm so excited about some of the things that we have in the pipeline to come to all of you. But always, we want your input. That's really what the show is about. So Emily, our wonderful technical director, is going to show you some of the different ways that you can get in contact with us here at the show, and also ways that you can be viewing the show. But we want to remind you there's only one way to watch us live. That's at www.autism-live.com. When you go there, you see a lovely desktop. I always like to say it's much neater than my own desktop. And there is a box there that says questions we're answering right now. When we're live, that box is active. You put your cursor there, you type away whatever you want, hit enter, and it shows up magically right here on the screen in front of me. And in that way, you and I can have a conversation, but more importantly than that, you can have a conversation with whoever I have sitting next to me. And we have some pretty amazing people who come through this studio, either actually through the studio or virtually through Skype. And this week is certainly a superlative week for that. Yesterday, we had Monica Holloway, author of Cowboy and on Wills, and we had Alex Plank with us from wrongplanet.net. So today is just as exciting, I have to say, and hopefully you will participate and let us know the kinds of things that you want access to, because that's what this whole thing is about. All right, we like to start every morning with something we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. Yes, the jargon du jour. This is when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym, and try to make sense of it in our lives. You know, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but when we get a diagnosis of autism, it takes a little time, right? Often there's a little grief that comes with it before you find your feet and realize, hey, this is, as our one of our guests today, Lisa Ackerman, as she likes to say, when you hear the words autism, it is not game over, it's game on, right? So you have to really get ready to do some things that you hadn't had planned, right? You were planning on going on a vacation to Disney World, and now you've got other things to do. Maybe you still get to Disney World, but you've got other things to take into consideration. And you start to investigate what you're going to do, and what you find is a wall of jargon that separates you from knowing what it is you need to know to help yourself or to help someone else on the spectrum. And I know for me, in the beginning, I railed against the jargon. I really, as a friend of mine likes to say, I was fatutzt whenever somebody would use jargon terms, and I would say, excuse me, my day is full enough. I don't need to pull out a dictionary to figure out what you just said to me. And to be honest, the dictionary was of no help to me, because sometimes it would be a word that, and today's a perfect example of that, a word that we've seen before in other contexts, but in the field of autism, it means something quite different. So what I learned over time is it's essential to make friends with the jargon. Once you do, you understand more about what needs to be done to help yourself or to help your child. Okay, so today's term, elopement. Right? And automatically you hear this and you think, what? They're afraid that my child's going to go to Vegas and get married? This is what we're afraid of? No. Of course, in some circles, that might mean what elopement is. But in the realm of autism, it means something entirely different. So let's take a look at our actual definition. When a person leaves an area without permission or notification, which can result in that individual being in a potentially dangerous situation. Pretty good definition. And our working definition, which hopefully hones it even more, wandering, bolting, or leaving without permission. And you will hear the terms wandering or bolting. And the reason why I made sure that we put that in is because I think a lot of times people assume that it's one or the other, that it's wandering or it's bolting. You know, we will see sometimes on the autism spectrum a child who just aimlessly will walk through some place and touch things, right? Or look at them even. And they just keep moving, but they're constantly in motion. Then we see other kids who literally, if there's a pause in the conversation, they will start to run in a direction and they won't stop. My son engaged in both of these behaviors. Can I tell you? And I think back, I was just talking about this with somebody yesterday because they were saying, how could I not have known? How could I not have known? How could I have not have seen the signs? And they were really angry with themselves for not have seen. And I always want to hug people when they're feeling that way, because I think we've all felt that, right? How did I not see the signs? And I think back to well before my son was diagnosed, when we would take him to a party that other people were getting together, and we would always bring him, be all adults, and here we'd be with our toddler. And one of us would always be on gem detail. And I have a picture of my husband at a Thanksgiving dinner out on a friend's back porch, and they had this huge fenced-in backyard, right? Huge backyard. And my husband was like doing this to try to prevent my son from being everywhere and everything. And everybody was saying, let him run, let him play. And my husband was saying, you don't understand. He'll dismantle the fence. He will go take the bird bath apart. And people were like, he won't. He's, 2 years old. What are you so afraid of? But my husband knew better, right? And that my son would have found a way to climb the fence and leap. And that because we're a little older, let's be honest about this, I think a lot of other people could have let their child, and I marvel when I see people with toddlers where they're saying, stay here, and the child isn't holding their hand and they're doing something else. I think, what planet are you on? I could never have done that. I could never have done that. And that's not just with autism. There are kids who are busy, right, that don't have autism. So we need to make sure that we're clear about that. And it's not uncommon for our kids with autism to elope. I think as a parent, this is one of the greatest fears and one of the things that we need the most attention on early, especially if you even suspect that your child might wander or bolt. I felt lucky as a parent that I knew that my child would wander and bolt, so we tried to be hyper vigilant. It did not mean that we always managed to make sure that he didn't bolt. There was one time in particular when he had just finished a therapy session and the therapist had left, and I was trying to cook lunch really quickly so that, because we had another therapist coming in just a little while, I took a phone call. I thought that we had a little hotel lock on the door, and I thought I had put it on, and I was cooking lunch and talking on the phone. Disaster, right? In the making. And my son had emerging language, and he had a little poo hut, and he came to me and said, picnic. And a couple of times in between therapy sessions, we would go out into the front lawn. We were in a condo, and we would have a little picnic. And sometimes we would take his poo hut. And because I'm on the phone and I'm turning over chicken nuggets that I'm making from scratch that are gluten-free, casein-free, soy-free, right? And I said to him, yes, honey, we'll go on a picnic in just a minute, forgetting that my child, who has emerging language, did not have the receptive language to understand in a minute. And he got to the door, and I'm talking on the phone, and I just heard the faintest, smallest noise. And I realized somewhere in the back of my head what it was. And I went tearing out the front door and down the front steps, and he was almost to the street by the time I got there. I have an emotional reaction even today thinking about that when I think about all the things that could have happened. And I have great sympathy and empathy for parents who are dealing with elopement. And I encourage you, if elopement is something that you are dealing with, that you ask for help for that as soon as you can. I leave it to you to prioritize what needs to happen, but elopement is a serious issue, and it is something that can be changed. Absolutely. We have all kinds of experts that have been on the show and that we've done different interviews with about this, and it is something that can be changed. Children don't elope for no reason. Like all other challenging behavior, they do it for a reason. Sometimes it's to go to something, sometimes it's to go away from something, sometimes it's to get access to something. And if we give them functional communication and the understanding of rules, and if we have great antecedent strategies in place and great consequence strategies in place, depending on what the circumstance is, we can ensure these children's safety. And until we can get to that point, we have to have certain protocols in place to minimize the risk to these individuals. It's really hard, and excuse me, it does take a team of people to look at things for you to say, this window isn't safe. Here's what you're going to have to do. Here's the alarm you're going to have to install. Here's the fence you're going to have to build, right? But they're all worth it. And I do want to say to you that, excuse me, I have a tickle. If you need equipment, if there are things that you need to have, and even, there are great wrist bracelets and ankle bracelets, excuse me, if you need to be outfitted with something along those lines and there is a cost associated with it that you cannot afford, there are all kinds of places, including Autism Care and Treatment Today, ACT Today, that provide grants for those kinds of things. Don't put it off. This is one of those things that you really can't afford to say to yourself, well, I'm going to worry about that after I do the taxes and after I get the vacuuming done and after I figure out, because your child's safety, I know, but I'm just reminding you that a lot of times we think to ourselves, okay, I got to do that, but I don't know how to do that. I would encourage you to ask for help. They have special grants at Autism Care and Treatment Today. You can go to act-today.org and let them know that you're having a problem with elopement. It's one of the things that they feel very passionate about, is helping you to take care of that. And there is hope and help, and there are strategies to do until your child has the understanding of why they don't. We have to make it worthwhile for them not to elope or bolt or wander, and we can do that. They've done tons of research on this and had great success, so don't let it go. Elopement, though, a very, very serious issue. Okay, we always have a question every day that we ask you because we love to hear your answers to them. And hopefully we'll have a chance today to look at both today's and yesterday's. Our question today is, what challenging behavior has your child overcome? When you look back over the years and think, okay, I remember when we were having this, and the list for me is lengthy. My child no longer engages in self-injurious behavior. He no longer engages in violent behavior. He doesn't bite anymore. All of these things are things that he did. He doesn't bolt or elope anymore. Even in a grocery store, and as I said, he's 9.5. Even in a grocery store now, he's very good at saying to me, Mom, I want to go over there to look at that. And now that's acceptable. There were years when that was not acceptable, right? But now that's acceptable for him to say, Mom, I'm going over there. I'll be right over there. You'll still be able to see me. He gets it, right? So I know my child has overcome so much, but I love it when you guys write in and tell what your child has overcome, because it lets everybody else know who reads that. Look, it's possible. It's absolutely possible. And that's so much of what we talk about here is what's possible. So do take the time to write into us and tell us what challenging behavior your child has overcome. And if you have time, let us know what it took. I think about even the poop in the pants or pee in the pants. We don't have any of that. And first of all, how much easier my life is now because we don't have all that challenging behavior. But beyond that, not having to deal with that challenging behavior, what that has meant for me and what that has meant for my child and what it has meant for our entire family. The things that we can do now, the places that we can go. This is the Dr. Seuss book. Oh, the places you can go. Oh, the things that you can do. You've got feet in your shoes and head in your brain, something like that. I don't know. But in any case, our lives are different than I thought they were going to be because we aren't held back by those challenging behaviors. And that's a very exciting thing that I love to share with other people. And I hope that you guys will share wherever you are, because it may be that you have some of those things overcome and you have more to come. But share. It's so good when you guys share. Now, we always have a topic of the day or a topic of the week. And if you couldn't guess already, our topic this entire week is challenging behavior. How we can look at challenging behavior and emotionally understand what's happening instead of the overwhelm that comes with the challenging behavior, because it does, right? I know, man, when my child would do certain things, and we saw this last week on the A word, that, Jack Riley had made so much progress, but then a new challenging behavior cropped up, because it does, and it does even with neurotypical kids. Think of the teenage years, right? New challenging behaviors do come along. And yet with autism, there is a sinking feeling sometimes that comes to the parent that says, wow, I thought we were headed towards good things. I thought we were on the road to Emerald City, and now I see that we're not, right? You get taken right back down to square one. It's very emotional. And it gets in the way of all those good things. But the good news is that we know how to deal with challenging behavior, whatever it is, and we're talking about it all week long with all kinds of experts that are going to be here with us. So some of the things that we have going on today, first of all, one of the things we have is a healthy eating tip that we always feature on Tuesday. But in just a few minutes, we're going to be joined via Skype by the fabulous Lisa Ackerman. You know Lisa because she's the founder of TACA, Talk About Curing Autism, an amazing parent support group. But Lisa also joins us on a regular basis here to do What's Left, the cooking show. She's an amazing cook. That's GFCF, SF, gluten-free, casein-free, soy-free foods that are really tasty and easy to do. So she joins us with those segments on a regular basis. But she is also an amazing activist and has a really wonderful blog called Real Help Now. We're going to be talking with her about that in a few minutes and about her reaction to the new CDC prevalence numbers. So very excited to have Lisa Ackerman back with us today. And then a little bit later on today, we will be joined by Evelyn Gould, who is a BCBA, a board certified behavior analyst. She joins us on Tuesdays for something we like to call Making Room with Evelyn. And Evelyn's specialty, she has extensive experience working with children on the autism spectrum and young adults on the autism spectrum. But what I find especially remarkable beyond that with Evelyn is that she has an understanding of what the emotional aspect of it is for the person who's working with the individual on the spectrum. So for parents, I just find her a lovely, soothing thing on Tuesday to help me to get through the week, to understand that what I'm feeling is completely appropriate and how to accept that and not poo-poo it, right? But to continue moving, because really, action is where it's at. Take an action. So we'll have Evelyn with us. And of course, we welcome your questions for both Lisa and Evelyn. You can start doing that now on our live feature on our Facebook or on our Twitter. We're going to take a break. And when we come back, we will be joined by Lisa Ackerman. Stick with us. Currently in the United States, 1 in 88 children is affected by autism. 1 in 88 means something different when your child is the one. Recovery is possible. Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod, host of Autism Live, an online show about autism broadcast by CARD, the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. I'm also the mother of a child with autism, my beautiful son, Jem. You know our old joke, guess what?
Chicken butt.
Chicken butt. So we're going to take the chickens. But things weren't always so easy. I remember when Jem was first diagnosed with autism. I used to lay awake at night in bed and pray for someone or something that could help us to get our child back. My prayers were answered by Dr. Doreen Granpichet and the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. CARD treats autism and other related disorders using the principles of ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis, which is the only scientifically proven effective treatment for autism. It is also recommended by the American Academy of Pediatrics and the U.S. Surgeon General. About a year after we started treatment with CARD, we were able to see tremendous improvement, and we got our child back.
What grade are you in?
Second.
You are a smart cookie, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Do you like school?
Yeah.
Do you have any good friends?
Yeah, Oscar.
Oscar is your best friend?
Yeah.
And my child is just one of thousands to benefit from CARD ABA therapy. Across the nation and around the world, children are making amazing progress and being given the keys to unlock their full potential.
We are extremely grateful for the amazing job CARD has done in helping our daughter. Our daughter today, just in 4 months, I think is a totally different child than when she started with CARD. I kind of see it as, it seems like her brain in a way was asleep, and now that we've gotten so many services, we've seen her wake up.
Teacher has some gases.
Recovery is possible if you take the right steps, if you're willing to put in all the hard work. And 7.5 years, yeah, it's a lot of work. It's worth every little bit, and CARD's been there with us every step of the way.
I have 2 children with autism. I can't imagine a day without CARD or the therapists. They've been so instrumental in helping us with our kids and shaping their lives and helping us help them.
Thank you, Christina Big Alex.
Thank you, Jackie and Mariana.
We've tried other things before ABA, but the most beneficial thing has been ABA services, and I'd be the first person to tell any newly diagnosed family that you have to contact an ABA provider, and if you're lucky enough to have CARD, you're very blessed.
Recovery from autism is absolutely a possibility. We've been recovering children for over 20 years. It's just a matter of identifying the child's medical needs, understanding the child's sensory issues, and then teaching the child all of the skills they need in order to function normally.
We know there's hope for autism. Autism is treatable, and recovery from autism is possible.
Welcome back to Autism Live. So thrilled that we are joined right now via Skype by Lisa Ackerman. She is an amazing, there you are. She's an amazing autism mom and the founder of TACA, Talk About Curing Autism, but all around general fabulous energy in the world. And I'm I'm glad that you're here in the world with us, and I'm glad you're on my side, Lisa. That we're on the same team. That makes me happy every day to know that you're out there working for us and getting so much done. And I asked you to come on this week because we had a whole lot of news this week, and in particular, the 1 in 50. You have a fabulous blog that's called Real Help Now, and you had 2 posts within 24 hours that were just amazing. So tell us a little bit about what the 2 posts were, and then we can talk in depth about what you felt about this 1 in 50.
Well, it was a year ago and a week when 1 in 88 was announced from 1 in 110.
Yeah.
And now 1 year, 1 week later, we have 1 in 50. I called Dr. Bob Sears, who's on our physician advisory board, at 10 p.m. when I saw the press release. And I said, you'll be blogging tomorrow, and I will stalk you until it's done. And then hung up my phone, almost like, it was an Italian hit of some poor guy. Cheryl knows. I try to keep it brief so he can stay focused on his family. He's got 3 lovely sons. And called him again the following morning at 7 a.m. and I just said, so how's that blog coming? He's like, I'm almost done. So, he's been a great resource to ring the bells as a pediatrician and a well-known pediatrician. His family, there's 5 pediatricians. They love kids. They want to help children. And he is deeply concerned, as the rest of his family is, about the new rate of autism. And it's interesting. So Bob wrote his information, autism is so common, even more common, who cares?
Right.
Because that's kind of a follow-up to what he wrote the previous year. And then I followed up with, don't worry, it's just autism, and at the end, of course, tongue-in-cheek, I said, yeah, it's time to worry.
Yeah.
Those 2 posts in less than 40 hours had 30,000 readers. So there was a lot of people interested in a pediatrician's opinion, especially one that's concerned. It's so rare these days.
Yeah. Well, or I'll say this. I don't know that it's rare that they're concerned, but it's rare that a pediatrician will publicly admit it.
Yes.
That they'll speak up and admit it. Because they better be concerned. Yeah. They better be scared, but I don't think many of them are allowed to admit it.
Yeah, I don't know if they're allowed. I don't know what it is. And to be a pediatrician and to be vocal against the American Academy of Pediatrics is like revolting against your union.
Yeah.
I don't know if that would be the wisest career move if I was consulting a pediatrician as a PR or public relations individual. So I understand, but at the same time, there are things that they can do to help, raise the alarm.
Yeah. I'm sure that they didn't get into being a pediatrician because they wanted to please the American Academy of Pediatrics. I understand their concern and their, not wanting to step on toes, but come on. They got into being pediatricians to help children, I hope.
Yeah, and I just came back from a conference with over 130 new doctors being trained to help families with autism. And really, I don't look at them as the enemy. I see them as the solution. And for many of them, they have busy days. They're probably on, I know, let's not have a pity me party. They're probably the lowest paid physicians out there.
Yeah.
And they do the most work. They see many patients. Active practices see, between 40 and 50 patients every day.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of screaming, crying kids.
Yes, at all hours of the day and night, too.
Yeah, they're really happy to go and say hi to the pediatrician, so
right.
It's not usually a well baby, it's something else.
Yeah. Absolutely. So it's a tough job.
It is. So I feel like the point being is that the science is complex, and there is a lot of science out there, and unless they spend, 10 hours a week, and that's my hobby, and I'm not a scientist nor a doctor, I think it's really hard to stay abreast, of the press. I really think it's a challenge when you're very impacted and busy to read all of the latest that's going on. And it's like with your own kid, if your kid starts to regress, sometimes, being this close to it, as a parent, you're not seeing the regression as much as a video camera or a neighbor or an aunt or an uncle. Yeah. And I think with autism, they're seeing so many cases, it's kind of sadly the new normal.
Right. Absolutely.
I mean, I'm not trying to justify or give them a get out of jail free card, but I think they can be part of the revolution of change.
Absolutely.
And this survey, it's a parent survey. So that new 1 in 50 number, we don't know if it will be adopted by the CDC as the 1 in 88 replacement. It's basically, this one is a parent survey. It's a different methodology, but it's the same methodology that they did in 2007. And in 2007, that was a 1 in 86 report back on the parent survey. And then follow up, in 2011 to do this survey one more time, it's 1 in 50. And that's I think I checked my math, a 40% or 46% increase. That's astounding. I don't care if it's a parent survey. You and I know, it's like if I was being surveyed, odds are you're not going to get a frickin' response.
Right.
I'm making dinner, I'm running around, I'm doing my job.
Right.
We're not apt to be more responsive.
Right.
I think that's a joke if you think that kids with autism and their families are just waiting for that phone to ring.
Yeah.
So I look at it regardless of if it's adopted or regardless of how it was calculated. There's a similar survey that was done, and the alarm bells should be going off.
Yeah, they absolutely should. So, Lisa, I got to ask you, because I've been asking everybody in the last week that's been on the show, in the moment when you saw it and heard it for the first time, the 1 in 50, what was your immediate reaction?
Well, I was home, and it was at night, and I'm not afraid to share. I put my keys in the bowl for tomorrow, and I opened a bottle of wine and started crying.
Yeah.
The immediate, it goes back to, there's more families that are just going to need help and struggle, and kids in pain and kids frustrated. So I don't mean to get off the clipped on you, but it's wrong. It's
an emotional thing. Please don't apologize for feeling emotional about it, because I know that your emotion in this arena has led to so much good that has happened over the years. So you're not allowed to apologize for having such good feelings about it. But and I do consider them good feelings, because that feeling of this can't go on, as I said, it's led to so much action, especially on your part. But and then I'm curious, did you talk about these numbers with your son?
It was interesting. Jeff, he's such a miracle. I couldn't have a conversation with him just 5 years ago. It was non-existent. And to talk to him now, I think he should become a philosopher, Yeah. He looked at me and said, Mom, it's going to be okay. There'll be answers for all the kids. You found answers for me. And I just almost died.
Yeah.
He's just the walking miracle and the love of our family. We are so blessed to have him here, but I wouldn't call autism a blessing. I'd call him the blessing.
Yeah. And how old is he now?
He's going to be 16 next month.
That's amazing.
Oh. And he's taking driver's ed, so watch out, SoCal.
I'm thinking that's going to be another bottle of wine for you.
Yeah. It's so funny teaching my daughter who's neurotypical to drive. I'm like, we're not in England. We're on the right side of the road.
I can't even imagine. That's at least 6 years away from me, and I'm really glad.
Yeah.
I'm hoping we'll have done away with cars by then. Maybe everybody will be taking public transportation. But in any case, back to the 1 in 50. So you had that initial reaction, and I haven't known you for a long time, but I know you to be a person of action. So you had the reaction, you had the tears, you had the wine, and now it's almost a week later. Where's your head now?
Well, the next step is really to, this week is all about, launching Autism Action Month. And for most parents out there, they're painfully aware. And there is an awareness component, because we need to get our public behind us and our team, to join us. So we'll be press releasing and launching Autism Action Month to not only empower families to tell their story, which is such an important part of getting people on board, is to understand and having people understand the personal nature of what's happening. And then activating, and it doesn't matter whether you're a corporation or your family or your next door neighbor, aunt or uncle, there's something that you can do that will drive positive change. So, the way that I'm going to do it is really focus on autism is treatable and that you can take action on behalf of your child. But also as a community, we need to take action to help these families get real help now.
Absolutely, absolutely. I don't think there's a person on earth who could have said it better. I just want you to know how much I appreciate you and all the work that you have done over the years, and the fact that you got these 2 great blogs out. And people can find them, Real Help Now, and they're both so eloquent. The Dr. Bob Sears one, So Autism is Now Even More Common, Anybody Care Yet? And your blog, Autism is on the Rise Again, But Don't Worry. Both of them on the same site. And I thank you. And we should also tell people that if they're looking for information, TACA is one of the best resources that there is. They can go to TACA, TACAnow.org. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. And also we want to thank you for the lovely cooking segments that you've been doing for us. They're fabulous. The recipes are fabulous. We're loving them.
Oh, I love doing them. And I appreciate resources like Autism Live to continue to get the message out. And there'll be 2 more blogs posted this week.
Awesome. Anytime you want to come back to talk about anything, our door is always open. Our Skype is always open.
Oh, thank you, guys. And I appreciate you. So keep up the good work, all right?
All right. Thank you. We'll talk to you soon.
Take care.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
That was Lisa Ackerman, amazing autism mom, amazing activist, and you really need to check out these 2 blogs to get a real sense of what's going on. And I subscribe to the blog, so I get it on my phone, which is a great thing, and I encourage you to do that as well. We're going to take a break and come back with our healthy eating tip for the week. Stick with us. Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod, host of Autism Live. As the mom of a young man on the autism spectrum, I frequently look to the world and hoped for compassion. Well, recently I told my son that he should treat others the way he wants them to treat him. That's when I realized that it's high time that I start walking my talk. This April, for Autism Awareness Month, Autism Live is asking everyone to perform an act of compassion. Do something nice for someone else. That's why I've decided to shave my head to show support for a young dad who's fighting brain cancer. How will you show your compassion? Compassion is a tool of change, but only when we take action. How we treat others teaches them how to treat us in return. This April, the autism community has the ability to lead by example by putting compassion in action. This can be a small act or a large one. It can be close to home or towards someone on the other side of the planet. If we all perform an act of compassion, who knows? We might just change the world. Get involved and show us your compassion in action on Facebook.com/AutismLive. And tune in on April 8th to watch me shave my head live on the air. We are not powerless. We can create change. Compassion in action. Welcome back to Autism Live. On Tuesdays, we like to feature a healthy eating tip, something that helps us all to eat a little bit better and help our children to eat a little bit better, because that's a really important thing to do. On the drive-in this morning, I was listening to NPR, as I frequently do, and they have a new segment where they're asking people to define what wealth means to them. So, and they were playing a bunch of clips that people had sent in of them saying, well, I think wealth is when you have enough money to pay your bills and make choices and do what you want to do. And there are all these different things. Wealth is when you have enough money to own your own business. Wealth is when you have enough money to take the vacation that you want to do. Wealth is when you value your time over your money. And then one lone voice in this crowd of people said, true wealth is when you can afford every day to make the best possible nutritional choices. And it was like it sucked the air right out of me, because I was comparing as people were talking about different things that were wealth, and I was like, oh, well, in this criteria, I'm definitely wealthy. In that criteria, I'm really not wealthy, you know? And then it got to when he said that, and I thought, oh my goodness, I don't know that I'm grateful for the fact that every day I have the choice at this moment in my life, and I haven't always, let's not be mistaken about that. I have the choice at this moment in time to make good nutritional choices for myself and my family, and I don't think I always do. Oh my goodness. And that hit me in a way that was very unexpected. And I thought about the times in my life when I didn't have the choice, and the times as a parent when I didn't have the choice. I am lucky that most of the time now, if I choose to, and if I want to buy organic, I have access to it, and it isn't so expensive that I can't. There are certainly some things that I go, okay, we can't do that. But most of the time I have access to things that are organic that I choose to spend a little bit more money on. And that certainly wasn't the case for many, many years. As we started Autism, it wasn't on my radar, and we couldn't have afforded it. I'd be honest about that. But I really was struck by that, about how important it is, and that it's a choice. That it is a choice. And if you have the wealth to be able to make the choice, do you? Now, for a lot of you, I know that you might be sitting there and thinking, but Shannon, I'm right where you were in those first few years of autism. I don't have that kind of wealth to constantly make the choice. And then I would argue that in both cases, there's the good, better, best, right? Choices that we could make. What's the best possible choice that we can make with the circumstances that we have? Isn't that what we do every day anyway on a whole series of things? What's the best possible choice that we can make with our current circumstances? And what I had slated to talk about today was choosing to do less processed foods. We talk about choosing whole foods, and I'm not talking about the market whole foods. I'm talking about actual whole foods, that when we buy things that are processed, and we're all going to at some time just for convenience sake, right? Not saying that you totally remove processed food from your life unless that really is a goal for you. And I think for most of us, just time constraints, it's not the big goal, right? But we'd like to eat healthier. So what can we choose in the moment to do less processed food? When we do less processed food, we help ourselves with more nutrition. We help ourselves with more fiber, which will help intestinally. And we also decrease fats and oils and salts, things in our diet that we don't necessarily need. And then another big plus when we take out the processed food is that we get rid of the artificial colors and the artificial flavors, which we talked about last week. I'm sure you've heard somebody describe shopping the outer edges of the grocery store and skipping the middle aisles. The reason for that is because the fresh stuff, the stuff that isn't processed, is usually around the outer aisle. I don't know why grocery stores are designed that way. If anybody knows, and I know that now people are, you go into some grocery stores and they change it up and they put the produce in the middle. But thinking about the old-fashioned grocery store model and shopping the outside, when, it's great to have everything cooked in one pan, or the convenience of being able to microwave everything all at the same time. I think about when I was a kid, the TV dinners that we thought that was big excitement. If we got to have a TV dinner and you peel back that aluminum toxic foil and the little itty bitty portions that were shriveled, and yet that was so exciting to us as a kid. And I think about casseroles, that, that was the big deal to have something in a casserole. And my mother loved it because it was all in one pan or all in one bowl or one pot, and there was less to do dishes wise. Well, we could still do those kind of conveniences, but with whole foods instead of having it be processed. Just the other day, when I knew I was going to have a really crazy schedule, I made we featured it here on the show, the GFCF SF chicken nuggets. And so instead of making just one batch and dirtying all the dishes that I needed to do that, I bought the big jumbo pack of chicken. And so I made like 8 portions of chicken nuggets, and I put them together with some other things and put them in the freezer and wrapped them in a way that was not toxic, so that when I have to, I can reach into the freezer and I can take something out and I can heat it up. It's my whole food TV dinner. I started to say turkey dinner, but it was chicken. so we can have the convenience if we just do it all at one time. I love when we have an opportunity to get a little bit ahead and be nutritional. So I encourage you to think about how you can put things on the plate, on the table, that are as minimally processed as possible. What does that mean for you? How can you do that and still save dollars? How can you do that and still get colors, eat the rainbow, right? And save money. Because if you think about it and you make your choices wisely, depending on where you live, I'm sure that there's a way that we could do it even just a little bit better. You know, that good, better, and best. If you're doing good, great, move to better. If you're not doing good, just get it, make a good choice then. And then eventually move to a better choice. And hopefully at some point we get to the best possible choices. I felt inspired this morning hearing that I have true wealth in that respect, and that I'm not necessarily using it. And when I think of all the people in the world who don't have those choices, and how they would view me not taking advantage of the riches that I have. Something to think about. Whole foods, less processed foods, and eliminate all that salt, sugar, oil, artificial color, artificial flavor. All right, there's our healthy eating tip for the week. We're going to take a break and come back with a really inspirational story in the news, so stick with us.
Every child with autism deserves a bright future.
Without further clarification, the Affordable Care Act could actually result in less benefits for individuals with autism spectrum disorders.
We urge Catherine Sebelius to clarify the Affordable Health Care Act.
She can make one change, one little minor change, to make applied behavioral analysis be part of the health care plan.
By signing this petition, you are protecting the health care benefits of individuals with autism spectrum disorders.
We need to make sure
that we are heard
and seen.
Sign the petition at autism-live.com.
Here's how you can show your infinite support. Create your own infinity ribbon.
What you're going to do is take a ribbon that's been cut about 8 inches long, and you're going to grab one end and then twist it, and then take the two ends and join them together, and then tape it together. And then I'm going to flip it around and take another piece of tape. And what I have is double-sided sticky tape. Squeeze down. You have your very own infinity ribbon.
With ABA,
the possibilities are infinite.
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 Welcome back to Autism Live. We love to give shout outs to people when they do a great job, especially when it's something that is compassionate and has to do with autism. So we want to give a huge shout out to Chili's this morning. If you haven't heard this story, it's really quite heartwarming. A young girl, Ariana Hill, who is 7 years old and has an autism spectrum diagnosis, loves to have a cheeseburger, and she went to a Chili's in Midvale, Utah recently, and was ordered her cheeseburger. And she's a child who has some language but struggles to communicate, like a lot of our kids. Her cheeseburger arrived, and the chef had cut it, because it's for a child, they had cut it in half. And she looked at the cheeseburger and became very overwhelmed about it. And the waitress, the server, realized that the child was not eating the hamburger and that there was something going on. And she took the time to ask what's wrong. And the child had some difficulty conveying, but eventually said, "It's broken. My cheeseburger is broken." And that was when the server realized, okay, there's an issue here, and she wanted to fix it. And apparently the entire restaurant got involved. The manager got involved, and the line cooks got involved. And instead of saying, well, it's a cheeseburger and you need to eat it and you need to just be like everybody else. They wanted to make sure that this little girl got what she wanted. And since she had asked for them to fix it and was able to communicate in that way, they did. They made her a fresh cheeseburger and gave it to her fixed. And she was so excited when she got the fixed cheeseburger that she kept kissing it and was glad to have it back, her fixed cheeseburger. And one of the employees there took a picture of it and they put it on Facebook to say, isn't this a lovely thing? Well, it went completely viral and they've gotten a great deal of attention about it, and rightly so, because so often we forget that a small issue to us that seems like, oh, well, that's just a flexibility issue, they could get over it, is a very big deal to some of our kids. So we really have to commend Chili's. We also want to commend the server, whose name is Lauren Wells, who did an awesome job. We want to commend the Chili's general manager for making sure that they hired quality people. So that's Harrison Dixon. And to the manager of that particular store, Brad Cattermole. To all of you and to Chili's in general, thank you for seeing our kids as individuals and understanding that when they need something, it is a worthwhile endeavor to give it to them. I think that's a beautiful story. And to Ariana, we want to say, great talking, great way to communicate your needs. Nice job. Hooray for everyone, and especially for Chili's. Make sure that you go to Chili's, patronize them, because they're doing an awesome job. We're going to take a break and come back and hopefully have a second to look at your answers to the question of the day. So stick with us.
Have you ever noticed that when you do something nice for someone else, you feel great afterwards? It's because in that moment you know you've shown kindness and compassion in a world that sometimes can seem chaotic and isolating. Well, this April, for Autism Awareness Month, Autism Live is asking everyone to put compassion in action. We all expect others to show compassion to our kids, to us, and to our families. What better way than to show compassion ourselves? That's why I'm asking everyone to do something nice for someone else. If we all take just one act of compassion, who knows? Maybe we can change the world. So watch Autism Live to find out how you can participate in our Compassion in Action campaign. And then make sure you tune in on April 8th, when I will shave my head 5 for a young dad with cancer. That's my way of taking action and compassion. We are not powerless. We can create change. Compassion in action. Feel the love and the breeze.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We ask you a question every day, and when we have the opportunity, we love to drop in on Facebook to see what you guys have written in. Our question yesterday, let's start with our question today first. What challenging behavior has your child overcome? And then I want to see, I can't remember what yesterday's was. It's complete conundrum and mystery to me. It was also about challenging behavior because that's everything that we're talking about today. It was what kinds of challenging behavior does your child engage in? So what's interesting to me is that your responses thus far, and of course you had more time yesterday, but more people wrote in about the challenging behaviors that their child is still engaged in than the ones that they've overcome. Now, we would expect that to a certain degree, but it's vastly different, the number. So I want to start with the behaviors that you guys wrote in about, and we'll try to target these throughout the rest of this week. So somebody wrote in and said, my son likes to stop. He also doesn't like whining babies. He literally will throw them. Well, that's a challenging behavior right there. And that is something, obviously, if it's something where a child has the potential to be violent towards a baby, a big, big concern. But you will want to, with all of these challenging behaviors, it's important that you find the function of the behavior. What is happening? Is there a sensitivity issue for the child, a sensory issue that they need to be desensitized to it so that they can withstand hearing a baby whining or crying without wanting to, I hope that's a misprint in terms of actually throwing them, but maybe throwing stuff, which is also a challenging behavior. Another person who says meltdowns at stores or public places if they have a Cars toy and he can't have it. You know, that's when we talk about the reasons for challenging behavior, one of them is access to someone or something. And of course, my question would be, is the child have they ever gotten a car toy as a result of throwing a tantrum? That would be the first thing that I want to look at is, has it worked that throwing the tantrum has meant that they've gotten a car? Because if they have, you just have a longer process, right? But if they haven't, what you need to do is build in to give the child functional communication to say that they want the car and to understand that the feelings that they're having are, understandable, right? But that they're not going to get the car this time. Give them an opportunity to work towards the car and make sure that they never get the car if they engage in the tantrum behavior, but that if you give them a replacement behavior, like we talked about yesterday, and they are behaving within a certain way and you have, a certain number of things that they have to do, that then and only then do they get the car, so that it becomes more worthwhile not to tantrum. And then gradually you would make it harder and harder and harder so they get the car less and less and less, right? Okay, another person who says the tantrums are still really bad with negative talking and screaming and crying. Remember, and we're going to have Evelyn Gould talking with us in a minute about how the emotional toll it takes on us. But remember that even the tantrums are the child trying to convey something that they don't have a better way yet to convey. And really important that you find the function of the behavior before you figure out the intervention. And if the tantrums are staying or getting worse, it means that whatever intervention that you've been doing has not been effective. Really ideal to call in a BCBA to say, what is reinforcing this tantrum? If it's happening more, something's going on to feed it, and you want to figure out what that is before you design an intervention plan. But a good BCBA can help you with that. Another person says constant chewing and meltdowns, although the meltdowns have eased up with medication. Interesting. We do always want to make sure that our children are medically healthy, because obviously there's a whole lot we can do behaviorally, but if there is a medical issue, that needs to be dealt with, correct? He thinks everything is his, and he screams and throws stuff till he gets his way. Sometimes it's not fair to his two older siblings. Okay, you know what I hear in that sentence, the important part of it, and I'm not passing judgment because heaven knows I myself have done this on many occasions, but he screams and throws stuff till he gets his way. We've all done this. We have all done this, that to quiet things and to make it stop, given them the thing that they did. But when we do that, what we do is we ensure that it's going to happen more. It is one of those things as a parent that you go, oh my goodness, what have I done afterwards? But in the moment, you've got all the emotion. We're going to talk about that with Evelyn Gould in just a few minutes. But it's going to be a tough road because he has been reinforced, it sounds like from what you're telling me, for screaming and throwing. And it's going to get a little worse before it gets a lot better. But it sounds like you really need some professional help, because it gets to the point where you can't do it by yourself, and there's nothing wrong with that. Another person who says constant echolalic speech, we have that jargon coming up at the end of the week. My husband has deemed it silly talk. And our kids will do repetitive talk, sometimes echolalic and other stereotypy that they'll engage in, sounds that they'll do over and over and over again. It can drive another person batty. But there are things that we can do to combat that, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later on. Somebody else says there are too many to list here, but the biggest are kicking, hitting, and headbutting for our youngest, and with our oldest, it's pacing, chewing on his clothes. Again, in all of these things, we need to get really good at identifying and going, okay, that's a challenging behavior, and it's happening with this amount of frequency, which means there's a reason for it. This is not just random behavior. I got to figure out what the reason is. What's the paycheck for this behavior? Then I'm going to give it a replacement behavior. I'm going to look at what happens before the behavior, and I'm going to look at what happens to the behavior, and I'm going to figure out a logical way to combat this behavior by changing either what happens before or changing what happens after or changing both, right, in certain circumstances, because we know that there's not a behavior out there that we can't crack. right? And that we can see improvement on all of them if we know what the function of the behavior is, and if we're willing to be vigilant about the intervention that is designed, and if we're willing to come up with an appropriate replacement behavior, we can change all of these behaviors. Another person who says, my son has anger problems if he doesn't get his way. Again, there's that thing, if he doesn't get his way, because we have all at some point let them have their way as a result of that. If he doesn't get his way, he will cry and whine or throw things. So again, finding the function. Huge meltdowns in public places where he will either throw his weight around or become boneless. We always called that the Gandhi maneuver in my house, and I have a friend who calls it spaghetti legs, right? It's civil disobedience, where they just go boneless and they lay down on the ground. And she said, the person says, so I can't get him removed either way. When they get to a certain weight, right, we can't pick them up anymore. It becomes really, really difficult. But there are some great interventions for that. Great interventions. And hopefully we'll have a chance to talk about some of them as the day progresses here. So many more here on the list, and I want to get to more of them. But let's take a break. Let's go to the A word. This is the amazing documentary being made here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, following a little boy, Jack Riley, who was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2. And at this point, he's getting ready to turn 3 in the series. And he's made a great deal of progress, but there's always more to be worked on. And as I mentioned before, challenging behaviors will crop up. Things that weren't there before, because as the children grow, they will find new things that they find difficult to communicate about and new things that they want. I always say, think of the teenage years. Kids will always be growing and adding new challenging behaviors. Hopefully it stops at adulthood, hopefully. And again, this is not just children on the autism spectrum. This is all children. So in any case, let's take a look at what's going on with Jack Riley. This is the A word.
Have fun.
Okay, bye. Just
I take it. I take it. Oh.
He's starting to sit a little bit longer, and he gets the idea, okay, if I sit, get my stickers, then I can go. This is actually a 10 token board, but right now he's only on 5 right now, but eventually we'll move him up to 10. It's a good way for him to visually see, that there is an end. Like, once I get all the board filled up with stickers, then I can leave.
Jessica does a preference assessment to see what Jack Riley wants to work for before she begins her first trial.
Okay, what do you want, pancakes, or do you want bubbles?
Bubbles.
Say I.
I want pancake.
Okay. Do you want pancakes or bubbles?
Pancakes.
Pancakes? Say, I want pancakes.
Want pancakes.
Okay, sounds good. What's your dad's name?
Mike.
Mike, good job. Here you go. Gonna put the J on?
Push J on.
Put the J. J. Good job. Nice job. When's your birthday?
December 15th.
December 15th. Good job. How old are you?
2.
Nice. Can you show me the fingers?
2.
2. Good job. Here you go. What's your mom's name?
Cheryl.
Cheryl. Very good. Whoops. Here you go. Put another one on there. Where does the K go? Good job. What does it say? Jack. Say Riley. There you go. All done. Here you go. It's good. Okay, go play. See you later.
What?
Here, you gonna bring the tractor?
Elbows.
The pig, yeah, it is a pig.
Wait.
He's lining up the dinosaurs in a row.
Lining up objects is associated with autism because it shows that the child doesn't know how to appropriately play with toys. This is why Jack Riley's therapists teach play skills, so you can learn how to learn. Playing is learning through imitation, and it also helps develop communication skills. This is why the behavior is redirected.
Let's make a bridge for the dinosaurs. Are they friends? Should we walk? Let's walk. Let's walk. Yay! Let's go play. What else can we do? Jack, what is this? It's
Is it this way? Is it this?
It's a this way?
Is it this way?
Is it a bridge? Did you make a bridge? It's a bridge. Can the dinosaur walk on the bridge? Walk on the bridge?
Walk.
Can you make the dinosaur walk? You do it.
Dinosaur walk.
Jack Riley, do it. Make him walk. Walk. Here, slide down. Slide. Whee! Ready? I want to do it. Ready? Whee!
Sometimes lining up toys can be appropriate play. Jack Riley lines up his blocks to build a bridge. What makes lining up toys an indicator for autism is when the behavior is limited and is the only way the child interacts with the objects.
That's more creative, Jack. At clinic, Sabrina suggested to make a visual schedule because he's been having a hard time walking outside. So look, what's this first? There's Dad, there's you, there's Miss Shireen. You're holding hands. Like you're walking on the sidewalk, holding hands. And then when you get to the grass, you stop. You stop.
You stop.
Yep. You stop. And then what do you get to do? You get to run on the
grass.
Say run on the grass. Good job. The end. But yeah, so we were gonna show him like along the way as every step, like you walk out, you hold hand, and emphasize holding hands.
Okay.
You guys walking the sidewalk holding hands, and then the next picture is you guys stopping in front of the grass,
Okay.
still holding hands.
Okay.
And then his reward is
you get to play.
You get to play on the grass. And he got the concept or the idea. Anyway, we'll see if put into play, will he get it? But I'm sure he'll get it.
He'll get it.
Yeah.
Having a destination was the biggest thing for him. Like knowing what the goal was.
I think before you say come here, and he thinks it's over. And yesterday he'd be playing, and Cheryl would say come here, and he would run down, and then she'd whisper, "You want to go to the grass?" And he just was.
Good.
I think it's all been about, now we have to go in every time we call him.
Every tantrum he has are really a lot of his bad behaviors because he doesn't know.
What do you have to do first?
Remember? What are you gonna do first, though?
Hold what?
You want to do it or you want me to do it?
Hold what?
Since he sees your picture.
Hold hands. Go hold hands with Dad, like the picture.
Good.
All right.
Remember like yesterday.
15, 16, 17, 18, 19.
We still hold hands.
Can
we
you?
still hold hands. Stop.
Right?
We still hold hands.
Where do you guys know that?
Right here, and then we made a mask.
Yeah, then we stop and make him ask. Can you say, I want to play on the grass? Okay, go.
Yay! Go! Have you hugged your tree today? You gonna kiss it too? Tree hugger energy. Come here. Come here.
Goes.
Yay! Uh-oh, wet butt. Wet butt. Hey, do you want stairs or grass?
Grass.
Okay, stay with Mom. 10 steps. 10 steps. Ready? 1, 2. Right, stay with me.
10 steps.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You want grass? Okay, good.
Using a visual schedule has helped Jack Riley a lot on outings because he can anticipate what will happen next. And unlike last week, there has been no aggression or biting. Whether it's a token board or a visual schedule, having items JR can see helps him a lot to know what's happening next, and therefore be a lot less anxious.
What do you want? You want grass or do you want... Okay, go play!
Welcome back to Autism Live. Our very special guest in the studio with us now is board-certified behavior analyst Evelyn Gould. Thank you for being with us. And we call this segment Making Room with Evelyn because you help us to make room for all the things that are going on, not just the horrible things going on. Because often there are horrible things that are going on, but that is rarely, if ever, the only thing that's going on.
That's true.
So I love that input always in my life to realize, okay, this is what's happening. That doesn't negate it, but there's so much more happening. And I had specifically asked you to come in today to talk about punishment because there was a recent study that was released last week that I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on, but it was this whole idea of we always in life talk about the carrot and the stick. Long before any of us had children on the autism spectrum, we had heard the expression the carrot and the stick, that sometimes people need the carrot in front of them to go towards something, or they need the stick on the rear end to go towards something or not do something, right?
Yeah.
So which is more effective, the carrot and the stick? And we were raised with the idea that the stick was valid to some extent, right? Whether it was that you got hit with the stick or that punishment. I don't know a single person who wasn't raised with some element of punishment. Then your child gets diagnosed with autism, and all of a sudden you have experts sitting there saying, what we found to be more effective is giving rewards for things.
Carrots.
The carrots are more effective than the sticks.
Yeah.
And that's a whole mind shift that we have to get our heads around, that still on a daily basis sometimes I forget it.
It's hard.
It's hard to follow. I can even understand it intellectually and remember it intellectually, but it's hard for my body to follow through on it. And then this study comes out last week that says, we did this new study and we discovered that the carrot and the stick are equal. And reading now, with all the things that you guys have taught me, reading through the study, I was like, I don't know that I agree with the way they measured this and that the way they carried out the study, but I thought it was at least worthwhile to revisit punishment. And is punishment effective? When is it effective? And why should we use it? And why wouldn't we use it?
Yeah.
So let's talk about the stick. Okay.
Okay. Well, I think the first point that you raised that I think is important to talk about is that we all have a natural tendency to want to use punishment. It's just like a knee-jerk reaction as human beings, I think, generally.
Yeah.
And when somebody does something we don't like, it's like, that's the immediate reaction, is to punish that behavior. But what we actually have found in the research is the best way to establish long-term behavior change and new behaviors, and to get like really strong positive behaviors happening, is to not use punishment. Actually, it's to use reinforcement and reward.
Yeah.
So that is hard to get your head around when our natural reactions tend to be to use punishment.
My question, I guess, is it our natural reaction, or is it the way that we have been in our lives and have the environment respond to us and us respond to the environment? Because the thought that comes up a lot in my mind is, well, they need to learn a lesson.
Yeah.
They need to be taught a lesson. We can't let them get away with that. And those are all phrases that I heard as a child. I don't think I came out of the womb.
I think it's a combination of both. So you have definitely cultural rules about punishment, a lot of which are actually myths when you look at the research and how punishment actually affects behavior. So you do have rules like, in order for him to learn, he has to be punished. And, bad behavior needs to be punished, and he deserves to be punished.
And they can't get away with it.
Yeah, they can't get away with it. So all these types of rules that we hear in our culture. And then there's also this other side of, as a human being, when something is happening that you don't like, you want it to stop.
Yeah.
And that's a natural reaction. And punishment is, in the moment, very effective at making something stop.
Okay.
And like I witness this with my cats on pretty much a daily basis, because they're so bad that they tend to do things I don't like, and I'm like, stop! And then they will stop. Like they immediately stop doing. So it's actually very reinforcing in the moment to use punishment, because generally the effect is to stop the behavior.
Right.
The problem with it is that in the long term, it's often not that effective.
Okay.
And the way that we use punishment is often to make ourselves feel better, rather than it being something that's going to actually make a behavior decrease.
Well, and not to jump too far, but I when you were talking about that, I was thinking about the prison system. That, you know, I think we would all be terrified if we suddenly said, well, punishment doesn't work, so we're going to do away with the prison system, right? And we cling to the fact that, you know, this will teach this person a lesson, when in fact what it does is it stops the behavior for a period of time while they're locked up, but we know that when they get back out that they're, you know, it's very likely that people will offend again.
Yes, so like one of the main problems with punishment is it doesn't teach the person what you want them to do. It just is an attempt to stop them doing what you don't like.
All right, well, that's powerful information to realize, okay, that, you know, what we're doing when we do punishment is we have a way of stopping the behavior for this moment of time, and it makes us feel better. All right, I can deal with that. But let's talk a little bit more about
problems.
Yeah.
And there are many of them. There's many problems with punishment. So one of the things we just said is that it doesn't teach the person what it is you want them to do. Instead, it just tells them, I don't want you to do this. So that's not very helpful, because how is the person then supposed to know what it is they're supposed to do? And you're not reinforcing or strengthening the behaviors you want to see. Right. And then the other problem with punishment is that there's a lot of side effects. So you tend to get, when you punish someone's behavior, you tend to get emotional responses and aggression, and people aren't very happy about it. It doesn't make anyone feel good, and that includes actually the punisher. Generally, when you punish somebody, you might feel better for a second, but it doesn't usually make you feel good in the long run. And then for the person who's being punished, you tend to see emotional responses like frustration, anger, aggression, like the kind of like hurt, or fear as well. Like we definitely, that's how you condition fear in people and animals, is through punishment, and you get like the cowering response, and then you get that person or animal avoiding you. So you turn yourself into like something to be feared or dread
or avoided.
Exactly. So that's also a problem. And then you tend to stop the behavior in your presence as the punisher, but that doesn't necessarily mean the person isn't going to engage in that behavior when you're not around.
Right.
And you also haven't taught them something else to do instead.
And as a parent, that's a really important aspect of this for me, because I'm supposed to be teaching my child all these things that I want him to understand so that he can someday leave me for long extended periods of time and know how to react and not have somebody with him monitoring how he reacts. And if I'm trying to do that through punishment, I'm not guaranteeing that I can get to that success.
Right. And then the other problem with punishment is that kids especially tend to get immune to punishment. So I'm thinking about my cats again. They are a prime example of this too, and that they start to ignore me whenever I'm screaming at them. And so the behavior, so then I have to like escalate the level of what I'm doing, or I have to resort to some other punishment strategy, like squirting them with water or some other extreme running at them or whatever. And unfortunately we see that happening with parents and children, and that the more kind of control you try to get over your kid's behavior using punishment, the more control you have to try and take. And you tend to then see this escalation of punishment, which can end up being very problematic.
Because at some point you run out of stuff that you can actually do. My sister likes to use the expression about don't let your mouth write checks that your body can't cash. Right? And so, you know, we've all been there where we said something, you know, to our child in that moment of frustration about, you know, well, then you're not going to get to watch TV for an hour, and the kid goes, I don't care. Great. Fine, whatever. And you're like, okay, now it's for a week. And then suddenly you've taken away television for a life, and you don't know how you got there, right? And you know you can't follow through on that. And so you're like, okay, I am the poster child for bad parenthood.
And you have a child who's just like, I have nothing else to lose, so I don't care.
Right. Go ahead, bring it. And they also, I think there's an element too where they know you can't really do that anyway. Or that you're not going to follow through on that, or, you know, and I think the older they get, the more they know us, and the more they know what we're capable of and what we're not capable of. And the flip of that is the older they get, the less we know them, and the less we know of what they're capable of.
And the other interesting thing about punishment is that, you know, you can't always avoid it, and sometimes it is appropriate to punish a behavior, provided you have your other strategies in place, like your reward strategies, and you're teaching and building good behavior and the things that you want. But you don't have, like, the punishment doesn't have to meet the punishment doesn't have to match the crime.
Okay, because that's an expression we hear all the time that it should.
Yeah, so that's another myth.
Crime, yes.
That it doesn't. When you're talking about using a punishment effectively,
right?
It doesn't have to match the crime. Like it doesn't have to. You don't have to resort to a massive, huge punishment for something you don't like. Actually, something really small can be just as effective because it's not. It's like reinforcers. It's like not about what it is, it's how you use it. So it's how you use this strategy.
Okay, give us an example of a case where it would be really effective and the punishment doesn't fit the crime, but it's much smaller.
So, for example, parents, when they're using timeout as a punishment, often think that they need to escalate the length of time that a kid has to be in timeout for a certain behavior. So when the kid does something, I don't know, so say he throws a toy or something and then you put the kid in timeout, actually a very short period of timeout is just as effective as you're going to sit there for an hour.
Right. And probably even more effective because you may not be able to follow through on the hour, right? And that wouldn't be effective at all.
And the actual important factors are that you're very consistent. It's always about consistency, that you always implement the procedure, the punishment, whenever the child engages in a very specific behaviour, and that it's very, very clear to your child, I did this, this is what happens. And that there isn't like a whole lot of discussion and argument and interaction about it, or like argue with your child about like, well, you're going to go to timeout now unless you say sorry, like, or whatever it is, like that it's just you did this happens, and now we leave you alone, and now you can come out.
Okay, and so that happens in the moment, or is that an antecedent thing that before you have the rules posted someplace, or you've talked through the rules, or
it's very important, I think, that you have your plan very clearly defined beforehand, because then you're also taking the emotion out of it, because one of the biggest problems with punishment is people tend to use it in an emotional place, and they're actually reacting to their own feelings, and they're kind of like, this is going to make me feel better and you're going to be sorry, rather than like thinking about what's actually effective and needed and applying it consistently and so on, and actually trying to get the behavior to go down.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense, because in that moment when we got all the emotion going on, it's like trying to make the healthiest eating choice when you're really, really hungry. It's like, you're not in charge anymore. There's other factors, and it's not necessarily going to go well. But I like the idea of posting it. You know, as a former classroom teacher, it was always a big thing in the classroom to have your rules posted and have the consequences for the rules posted, and make sure that the parents had them and they were visible at all times and the kids could see them. And I didn't think about doing that as a parent. I really didn't until I had therapists coming into my home, and we had, token economies that were set up on the wall. And but we also, at one point, when we did implement a punishment strategy, and there was a big poster on the wall that said, if this happens, these are the rules. If this doesn't happen in a certain way, that made it abundantly clear. Now, he was older, though. What do you do for kids that are really young and little? Do we even want to go to punishment with little ones?
Well, I'm just going to keep emphasizing throughout our chat today that it is better to avoid using punishment if you can, and focus on reinforcing and rewarding the behaviors that you really want, because it's a lot easier to get punishment wrong than it is to get rewards wrong. Okay, so really key. Yeah, so if you can avoid it, but in some circumstances it is appropriate and it is okay to use like a timeout or something, but you must make sure that you match the punishment to the function of the behavior as well. Right. So don't just randomly pick something you think is a punishment. You need to make sure you understand why your kid is doing what it is they're doing, and then match it. So if your kid's trying to get out of doing something and escape, then maybe timeout isn't necessarily the best thing if that's seen as a way he can escape homework or something like that. So you really do need a lot to think about. But the key here to what I'm hearing is we're going to avoid using punishment at all costs, because when you do use punishment, you need to make sure you get it right, which you're probably going to want to have an expert doing with it. So instead, it's the thing of last resort. Instead, we work on reinforcing things. Yes, and choosing what it is, focusing on what you want rather than what you don't want. Yeah. And if you are using a punishment procedure and you find yourself using punishment constantly rather than giving rewards, then you've got a problem happening, because what you're doing is not effective. Right. Because you should find yourself very quickly not having to use the punishment strategy if you are one, you've matched it to the function of the behavior, so should be decreasing the behavior, but also that you have the rewards in place, because that's building the positive behaviors that you want.
Right.
So you should never see yourself using this punishment strategy a lot.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I want to take a little break, and then when we come back, I want to talk about the emotional side of it on both sides. What the emotional side is when you're using reinforcement versus punishment with the child and for the parent, and maybe give some good examples. So keep your questions coming in. We'll be back more with Evelyn Gould, BCBA, after these messages.
Skills is an online program that provides assessment, curriculum, positive behavior support planning for challenging behavior, and progress tracking, and it does this all in one place. The Skills assessment and curriculum addresses 8 areas of development, which even includes advanced higher level areas such as executive functions and cognition, which pretty much makes Skills the only ABA-based set of curricula for teaching more complex skills, things like problem solving, planning, self-management, perspective taking, and even inferring and predicting others' private events. Skills is a 4-step system. Step 1 is to add the child to your account. Step 2 is to start assessment. The Skills assessment is the only ABA-based assessment with psychometric research demonstrating the language subscale to have excellent reliability. Every area of human functioning and typical child development from infancy to adolescence was researched, making the Skills assessment the most comprehensive of its kind in the world, and we're quite proud of that.
Skills is easy to use. Simply click Start Assessment and begin answering questions. Or simply type in a keyword, find specific activities to assess, and add activities to treatment. Step 3. Choose activities. Once you've completed the assessment, Skills selects from a pool of 4,000 activities categorized by age, level, and skill type to provide you with exactly those activities each child needs. Start by choosing a curriculum, then a lesson, and finally an activity. Click the information icon to view prerequisites, ages in which targets develop, examples, and IEP goals. Click the video icon to watch a short video. Once you've identified an activity you want to teach, adding activities to treatment is a snap. Step 4. Start treatment. Here you can access customizable activity lesson details, add your own customized targets and exemplars, and edit an activity status such as introducing or mastering it. You can even print handouts such as worksheets, tracking forms, visual aids, and other materials. Skills also offers multiple progress charts mapping curriculum progress, lesson progress, and cumulative number of activities and targets mastered over time. The Skills language curriculum is categorized by verbal behavior type so that users can identify progress for verbal operants, such as echoics, mans, tacs, and interverbals.
Skills is one of the only programs that provides the ability to write behavior intervention plans, or BIPs, for challenging behavior.
With just a few clicks, the outline of the behavior intervention plan is written for you and ready to be printed and implemented.
You can learn more about Skills today and get started by visiting us at www.skillsforautism.com, or you can call us at 877-975-4559. Skills. Progress starts here.
Welcome back to Autism Live. Our very special guest today is Evelyn Gould, BCBA Board Certified Behavior Analyst, and we were talking during the break about a bunch of different things. And I had mentioned this to Evelyn last week that we heard about the tiger mom for a period of time, the mom who was just very punishment driven with her kids, and then there was the dad, and I don't know what they dubbed him. It was something like Tiger, the lion dad or whatever. And I listened to NPR compulsively, and they had interviewed that dad, and this was a dad who just punished his children all the time and at random. He said to make sure that he taught them to be grateful and that he taught them the lessons of life, to the extent of sometimes just going in and stealing their blankets from them and taking their blankets away from them in their sleep to have them realize that nothing is guaranteed, right? And very heavy on the punishment and hitting his children. And they interviewed his son, who had gotten a scholarship to a top college, and all of the children had great grades and were getting into all these great colleges. And they interviewed the oldest son, who was no longer living at home, and said, "What did you think of your dad?" And he said, "I love my dad, and my dad was a great dad, and he taught me great lessons." And they said, "You love your dad after he did all these things?" And he said, "Yes, I do. I love my dad. I don't ever need to talk to him ever again or ever see him again. I have no desire to be in the same room with him ever again. But yes, I have great respect and love for my dad." And you know, it really drives home the message that, you know, maybe, you know, the dad got out of it what he wanted, but if what he wanted was for his children to go to good colleges and not pay for it. And while that's a really great desire, it is certainly not my only desire. I'd like to raise a child who goes to a great college and that wants to speak to me. And wants to be in the same room with me. And I think that that's possible. And to have a great relationship. And so we had been talking about the relationship that happens when you reward and the relationship that happens when you punish. And that it's vastly different for both people.
Yes, it is. So when you are using reinforcement and teaching skills and prompting as well, like helping your kids be successful or other people in your life be successful, you're going to have much more positive interactions with them if you practice noticing the good rather than focusing only on what they're not doing. Then you will notice, like, you will feel better, they react more positive towards you, and it's a lot nicer kind of relationship that's built than when you're just purely relying on punishment. You get all those nasty side effects where you have your child avoiding you, like this son who says he just doesn't want to be in his dad's presence. He's fearful, angry, all those types of things. It doesn't. Also, when you're the person implementing the punishment, usually you don't feel too hot either.
Yeah.
I certainly don't enjoy it whenever I see my cat's cowering in the corner looking at me, and that's just my cat. So I can't imagine what it's like with your child. It's a very different quality of a relationship that you're building and what you're teaching. You're teaching very different things. Like when you're using reinforcement, you're teaching life skills. When you're using punishment, you're just being like, don't do this or I'm going to get mad at you. You should be afraid of me. And also you're modeling for your child how to deal with situations that are difficult, especially if you're emotional. Like if you get angry and you're emotional and you hit out and you scream and you shout, you're modeling for your child, this is how we deal with problems.
And we're not saying, you know, because none of us is perfect. So I certainly don't want to sit here and make it sound like I have never resorted to yelling ever. Ooh.
And it's appropriate. Like I said, you know, in some cases it's appropriate to use punishment. Like when your child is about to run out into the road, it's appropriate to scream at them, and it's okay to like scream at them in that moment. And it's going to be very effective, especially if you're not using it all the time. We talked about that before. If you aren't a punishment-oriented person, when you then have to punish a behavior, it's going to be much more effective. And you won't have to use some extreme punishment as well to get the same result, because your kid is going to listen, because they will know that you mean what you say.
And I had shared with you during the break that we had to implement punishment at one point with my son. There were a couple of different times that we cycled through Jem hitting me. He wasn't hitting other people past a certain point. You know, very quickly that challenging behavior was gotten rid of, and he wasn't hurting himself. But it was always in the spring, and it would be like once a year, and for 3 years we would cycle into this period of time where he would hit me, and he would hit me in the face or the head, which was very effective because I couldn't deal with it. I just couldn't deal with it. It would just decimate me. And each year we got it under control at different points in his development in different ways. But in the final time, I was really down for the count. I was like, oh no, this behavior has come back, and it's worse because he was bigger, and it was so disturbing to me. And we got all kinds of help. We called in SOS, Specialized Outpatient Services, to work with us, even in addition to the therapy that we were doing. And because I literally said to the folks here, I can't. This is bad. This is really, really bad. I don't know how much more I can take. And eventually, one of the things that we implemented was a response cost, which is a punishment. I was saying that is punishment, right? And what it was, because the thing that my son prized the most at that time were his precious Legos. He loved his Legos. That's all he wanted to do. This is pre-video games, although he still loves his Legos. And And so what was decided in this individual circumstance with my individual son was that, and there was a big poster that said, if you hit, and you lose your Legos for the rest of the day. No matter what time of day it was, there were no excuses, no discussion. I wasn't allowed to say anything to him, but if he hit me and I was not successful in blocking, because I was always looking to block, but if it landed, then I would go and take all of the Legos, and they went into a place where he could not get at them for the rest of the day. And across a 2-year time period that poster stood on our wall, there were 2 different times that he hit me, and that I went and took the Legos, and I stuck with the fact that I didn't say anything. There was no, because I wanted to go, you see what you did? Yeah, you lost your Legos. And are you happy now? Right? And all that. I wanted to do all that, and I didn't. And he cried, though, and was hysterical. And I was saying to Evelyn that those were 2 days that I will never forget because they were hell on earth. One of them, it was later at night, and so it wasn't as long, but the other one was earlier in the morning, and the rest of the day was just murder on a stick. It was just because he felt like he lost everything, and so he engaged in a bunch more behavior, and I thought, what is the point of this, right? And it was really, really horrible. I had to call in extra help and say, I'm not going to make it. I need other people to be in here with me. Now, it was effective in that because we were able to make sure that we got help, it only happened twice because he lived in fear of losing his Legos. Right. But I wouldn't want to do that again for anything.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that it was effective, and so punishment can be really effective, but it can be really hard to follow through and make sure that it is effective. Yeah. For all the reasons that you just expressed. Yeah. A lot of the time, when you're working with experts, they will use some element of punishment alongside all these other things, but we have to teach. We have to use, I'm sure you had in place like a bunch of different teaching things going on and rewards and so on, and that also will have contributed to the reason that you only had to do it twice. Twice, yeah. And it was very clear to him, this happens, this happens. Yeah. The rules were there. It was very clear. She means what she says. Yeah. And there's nothing I can do about it, and this is the way it's going to be, and that is why it worked. Right. Right. But it was horrible. Yeah. And honestly, after the first time, it was such a big deal for both of us that he didn't engage in the behavior for pretty much another year. And then it was almost to the point where I would have taken the poster down. But then it happened one more time. And thankfully then it happened closer to the end of the day. And that time he was so upset about it. He said, I'm just going to go to bed now because I don't want to be without my Legos, and I'm just going to go to bed now, and I'll get up tomorrow and we'll start anew. And I just don't want to I don't want to be here. I don't want to feel like this. And that was really horrible for me as well too, because I found myself thinking, what if he were a teenager? And to see your child that despondent that they're like, I want to go to bed because I don't want to be in my skin, I don't like what's happening, I didn't like how that made me feel as a parent. Yeah. So it isn't something that I want to go towards. I do see where it can be effective sometimes, but I like my relationship with him much better when I remember to do things the way I've been taught, to use my proper tools, because he and I have a better relationship. Yep. I see now that, and I try to store up as many experiences with him as possible where he comes to me and tells me the truth about something that he's done, and that I meter out a punishment that is appropriate to what he has told me and the way that he told me. So what I mean by that is that if he comes to me and tells me, okay, I did something bad or wrong, and that I say to him, okay, well, thank you for telling me. What's most important is that you told me. Let's look at what happened. What are the consequences for it? What do you want to do to fix it? So I call that the punishment. Yeah, that's a really, really good way of dealing with it. But then I see the difference between us as a result, and I always try to remind him and link up with that and say, see how much better you feel for having told me? Because, and I've shared this before on the show, I want to have a child who comes and tells me things. Right, and that's the key, is to figure out, you've managed to figure out what is it that I really want my kid to do.
Yeah.
And what you really want your kid to do is to be able to come and tell you when they mess up.
Yeah.
And then you are able to that you have that communication between you, and then you can reward that behavior, and that's what really matters to you. And then you're thinking about, like, what is the type of parent that I want to be, and what is the relationship that I really want to have with my child, and that's what I focus on, not this other thing that he did that messed up.
Yeah.
You know.
I've seen so many times in my life, because I am truly terrified of the teen years. I really am. I say that on the show, and I'm nervous about it, and I feel like everything I can do now, it may not make a difference when we get there, but I'm going to at least try to put in as much of a foundation now to hope for the best during that time period. But I've seen with so many different people, the regrets that people have in the teen years are the loss of that communication that happens. And for us, for parents who had trouble getting the communication to begin with, I don't know if I'm going to be equipped to deal with a loss of communication then. Like, it literally makes me well up thinking about it. I can't imagine, a situation where I wouldn't want him to come and tell me what was going on, and to know that, I quote Dr. Phil from time to time. It's not because I'm the hugest Dr. Phil fan, but that his whole idea about that we should all have a safe place to fall. And that we, as when we're in a relationship with somebody, that we should be their safe place to fall. And with our kids, we especially want to be the safe place for them to fall. And that's certainly what I want for my child, to know that if there was one phone call that he had to make and the person was going to be on their side and be understanding, I would hope that it would be mom or dad or both, And now I'm all welled up. Because the teen years, we've had a lot of people talking about the teen years in the last couple of days. It's a tough time. I mean, let's face it, everything is tough, but the teen years in particular. Yeah. And for our kids on the spectrum, I think, it's got extra challenges. And for parents of teens, there are extra challenges. But if they're afraid to talk to us, and I certainly have seen times when my son, took time before he would tell me something. And when I'd say, why? Well, I was afraid of what your reaction would be. Well, I'd much rather have a discussion with a 9-year-old than a 16-year-old, But anyway, I digress. We're going to take a short break and come back and talk more with Evelyn Gould, so stick with us.
Every child with autism deserves a bright future.
Without further clarification, the Affordable Care Act could actually result in less benefits for individuals with autism spectrum disorders.
We urge Catherine Sebelius to clarify the Affordable Health Care Act.
She can make one change, one little minor change, to make applied behavioral analysis be part of the health care plan.
By signing this petition, you are protecting the healthcare benefits of individuals with autism spectrum disorders.
We need to make sure
that we are heard
and seen.
Sign the petition at autism-live.com.
Here's how you can show your infinite support. Create your own infinity ribbon.
What you're going to do is take a ribbon that's been cut about 8 inches long, and you're going to grab one end and then twist it, and then take the two ends and join them together, and then take it together. And then I'm going to flip it around and take another piece of tape, and what I have is double-sided sticky tape. Squeeze down. You have your very own infinity ribbon.
With ABA.
The possibilities are infinite.
With ABA,
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 the possibilities are infinite. With ABA,
The possibilities are infinite.
Welcome back to Autism Live. All this week, our overriding topic is challenging behavior, and we have with us BCBA, board-certified behavior analyst Evelyn Gould, who has a great deal of experience working with children on the autism spectrum. But you also have great insight for parents of those children. And I promised that I was going to ask you about dealing with the emotional side of when our child engages in challenging behavior, because there are all these parts of the equation that we have to be mindful of the child, right? And we start to learn those as a parent, because I think that most ABA providers are really good at teaching us those elements of it. But what often gets left out of the equation is what it feels like to the parent. And so I'd love it if you would take a couple of minutes to talk about that and how we can process that so that we can get back to dealing with the part of the equation that we can look at and change in terms of ABA.
Uh-oh.
You're fine. You just, there you go.
Okay.
Thank you. So take a second and give us, talk to us about making room for those feelings.
Well, I think it's probable that a lot of the providers who are working with you they're very focused on the child and how to help the child, and they're not really noticing that a lot of other stuff shows up in that interaction. And so you have this child having, engaging in this really big problem behavior, and then they have you, and how are you supposed to be dealing with the behavior? But then all this other stuff shows up, and the emotion that you're talking about, and that emotion can take you to all these different places that are like not even in the moment. So you're suddenly going to a place of like what kind of parent you are, and what does this mean? Like, how can I'm never going to be able to deal with this. What's his life going to be like? What's our life going to be like? What is this person thinking, that person thinking? I'm a terrible parent. Like, you just kind of go, your mind runs away with you at that moment.
Absolutely.
And is screaming all sorts of stuff at you.
And I kind of think about the fact that, you know how when you've done something 3 million times, like I think about cracking an egg now for me, that I can crack an egg and it's no big deal. I can sometimes even do it one-handed. It's not a big deal in my life. And if I were processing something and I was teaching somebody how to turn on the stove, and I was just cracking eggs and getting ready to make the thing, but I'm showing them how to do the stove, I may not think about the fact that they're looking at the cracking the egg and going, my gosh, how is she doing that, right? I might just be so focused on the thing that I'm doing. And I see therapists a lot, and they are so used to dealing with this challenging behavior with 23 other children, and they see it, they recognize what it is, they know what to do, and they're busy doing that. And to us as parents, we look and go, how are you doing that? How is it that you're managing to do that? And I think it's so second nature now for some therapists that they don't have the opportunity. They're focused on doing their job, so they don't see that we're standing there going, how did you just make that child do that? I don't get it. And we're having all kinds of emotions that they're not noticing while they're doing it. But you guys are just so good at it.
Well, yes, but also we're not bringing the same stories and the same history to that situation.
Exactly.
Like if I'm interacting with your child, I don't have a whole history of your child, and it's not my child.
Right.
So even though I may care very much for your child, it's not the same baggage that you're bringing along with that interaction, so automatically it's easier for me because I don't have all this screaming going on in my head.
And baggage is the right word. Baggage is the absolute right word, because we do bring to the table not just what's happening right now, but what happened yesterday and what happened 2 months ago and what the doctor said and what the mother-in-law said, and everything.
So I might be really effective at like dealing with your child's challenging behavior, but if you look at me when I try and have difficult arguments with other really important people in my life, I fail miserably most of the time at doing the right thing.
I don't believe
and I can step back and look at those situations afterwards and be like, oh, I should have, this is what was happening, and I got in my own way. I basically get in my own way, because it's just very different when you're having an interaction with someone who you have that emotional tie to and a history with and all that kind of stuff. It's very hard not to get in your own way.
But we need to work with our kids, and we need to work on the challenging behavior, and we need to accept that these emotions are going to happen. But how do we get from that acceptance back into doing the job that we need to do?
It's very hard.
It is hard.
It's very hard, and it takes a lot of practice, and I think the key is to practice noticing what's showing up for you a lot. So noticing what your mind's telling you, noticing the emotions and making room for those emotions, and doing that outside of those moments is really important. So imagine if we were trying to help you get over a massive spider phobia. We're not going to necessarily just throw you in the deep, be like, okay, this is what you need to do, Shannon. You need to not think about this, and you need to make room for your distress, and you need to like realize that your mind's telling you this big scary spider's going to hurt you, but it's not really. It's just words. I could tell you what to do and then put you in a room full of spiders, and are you going to be able to do it?
No, I'm gonna have a nervous breakdown.
Exactly. So you know, me saying this is what's happening when you're interacting with your child, and you got to make room for these feelings, and and think about your values, and realize that your mind's just like this yeah thing, and it's not really stopping you from doing the right thing. Like, I can tell you that, but in the moment it's going to be very hard.
Okay. So
it's really about practicing outside of those very, very challenging situations as much as you can.
So when things are calm, it's like the fire drill. We go back to the fire drill, practicing things when it's not happening, so that when it is happening,
you'll be more likely to be able to not be consumed by your emotions and your thoughts.
So if our child's, one of the people wrote in and said, one of the viewers said that the challenging behavior that their child is engaged in is tantrums in public places.
That's very hard.
It's very common too, right? So how would you rehearse your emotions for that, so that when you got to the moment, you were just dealing with the behavior and accepting your emotions, not saying that the emotions go away, but moving past the emotions to deal with the behavior? How would you rehearse that?
I mean, something that I find helpful is to, for example, first of all, you need to imagine that you're having that situation, and then thinking about what types of things show up for me in that moment. So I'm imagining that my kid's having this meltdown in the shopping centre. What does my brain start telling me? What do I start to feel? And then what does my brain tell me about how I'm feeling and what that means, and what does this whole situation mean, and where do I go? And writing those things down can help, like just writing down a list of what my mind is telling me, and that's going to be pretty painful, because it's not going to be telling you nice things. It's not going to be saying to you, good job, you're a great parent, you can do this, you're like the best. Like, it's not going to be telling you things like that, because it's going to be trying to help you escape from the uncomfortable situation that you're in. So writing down like where your mind goes and all those types of thoughts on like a whiteboard or on a piece of paper or something like that can help, and then writing the feelings and making room for the feelings as they're coming up for you, like just imagining expanding around them. Breathing, that really helps. And then with the things that you've written down, seeing if you can just see that they're just words. They don't actually have your hands tied behind your back. They don't have to be barriers. They can be there, and you can still be the parent that you want to be.
And some of them aren't true.
Some of them may be true and some of them may be not, but it doesn't really matter. It's kind of about workability. And whether it's true or not, is it helpful? And probably not. It's not helpful to focus in on these things when you have your child there and you need to deal with that, and you need to help your kid be the kid that you want them to be. And so that's really what you want to practice doing, like writing those things down, not evaluating or judging, just write them down, that they're just there, and then trying to diffuse from them. So trying to like to see that they're just there, and it doesn't matter if they're true or not. What do you actually need to do? What really matters? And what do you need to do to be the parent you want to be and to help your kid be the kid that you need them to be? Does that make sense?
It does make sense. You know what's interesting? The leap that I just made. We just had Jem's parent-teacher conference, and we were talking at the conference about how important it is at this age range, and not just for my child, but for all children, to start to self-edit and not say everything that pops into their mind, right? And so we were talking about strategies to help him in the classroom so that he doesn't raise his hand. You know, there was a long period of time when getting him to raise his hand and give input was the thing we were striving for. Now he wants to raise his hand and give input on every thought he ever had, right? Right? So we want to taper that down. And one of the strategies that we came up with was that he had a piece of paper next to him and that he could write down all the things that he wanted to say, and the criteria was, if he was going to say something, did it add to the conversation? So was there something about it that was productive? Is it kind? And is it necessary?
Apply that to yourself.
And I'm seeing, you talking about this list, and I'm going, oh my gosh, it's the same list for us. Is it kind? Is it necessary? Is it relevant?
Is it useful?
Yes. Is it, is it at all useful? Is it productive? And so that's just very funny
Sometimes
to me.
I find it helpful to do that I'll come back to you later strategy. Like, all this stuff is coming into my head, and usually for me, like, everyone has their own little stories, and for me, mine's usually like something about not being enough, or not being good enough, or failing, or like, the not good enough story is the really big one. And so I try to be like, okay, that's there. not good enough, sorry, hi, I'll come back and have a chat with you later. I need to deal with this situation.
Right.
And also I find it very helpful, which is a tip from Lisa actually, is to think about like, well, what would a competent manager do right now? I switch it up. I'm like, what would a calm and confident partner do right now?
Right.
What would a loving, kind partner do? What would a competent manager, what would a competent clinician do right now?
Right.
And that really helps me be like, yeah, they wouldn't be listening to all this crap that's going on here. They would be doing what needs to get done.
Right. That's wonderful. I love that. My husband and I were just having that conversation the other day because I said, when in doubt, when I'm completely, I don't know what to do, I think, what would Oprah do?
Yeah. And if that works,
what would Oprah do? I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do this interview. What would Oprah do? Yeah. And you're thinking about what a calm clinician would do, and so and it helps because then I'm immediately calm. Then I don't have to worry about. It's not so much about me and how incompetent and unworthy I am, but what would Oprah do? And then okay, then I can just try to emulate as best I can.
Yeah, and so I think that is also tapping into the values thing then, because when I'm saying to myself, what would a competent supervisor or manager do, I'm basically saying, what is the type of manager or supervisor I want to be? Who am I trying to be right now?
So I'm saying I want to be Oprah. That's okay for me.
That's okay. It's like I want that's something to aspire to.
Right. There are worse things I could want to be.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. And I think as a parent, what a great thing to think about. Well, if it's that question too that Dr. Phil, when people say, I say I'm all about Dr. Phil today. When he asks people a question, they say, I don't know. And he says, okay, but if you did know, what would it be, right?
Absolutely. Like if there were no problems or barriers, what would you be doing?
Right.
And that's really important.
And so when we get into that thing of, well, I'm a terrible parent for having said this, instead of focusing on that, saying, well, what would a great parent do? Yeah. What would a great parent do in this moment?
Expecting yourself to always be able to do the next best thing and the next right thing. And you might have done the wrong thing right this second, but you always can do the next best thing, and you should expect that of yourself and be compassionate.
Yes.
Self-compassion, I think, is really, really important.
Yeah. Yeah, as a parent, one of the things that I try really hard, loved my mother. My mother was a brilliant, brilliant woman, but it was harder for her to say, I'm sorry I was wrong than anything else in the world, right? That she really struggled with that. And it's hard for me to say that, but that I try to make sure that when I need to, I say that to my child. I'm sorry I was wrong, and take ownership of that, because I want him to be able to say that when it's appropriate and have it not be this, monumental task. I'm sorry I was wrong. My behavior was not very good just now. I'm going to work on that.
Yeah, I think it's really...
And that gets me closer to my child.
It's hard for us to let go, especially in the moment when we're having all these thoughts about what's happening and our anxiety is really high, and it's hard for us to let go of that and do what we need to do. For some reason, we just tend to want to cling on.
Absolutely.
And then avoid that feeling bad, and I don't want to be feeling like an incompetent person, and this person thinking I don't want to feel these things, so I need to make it stop.
Absolutely.
Or I need to just escape this situation, and it's hard for us just to make room and just loosen our grip on those things.
Absolutely.
Does that make sense?
Totally makes
really
sense.
Hard.
And I just realized what time it is. We have to get you out of here, but I thank you so much. This was so great. I always say this is my great therapy for the week. I got to get sleep. And then I go, okay, I don't have to be perfect. So absolutely wonderful. I thank you so much. Emily, we got time for a quick break before we come back and answer this question? Not really. Okay, so I'm just going to take a second here and say that somebody had written into us and you wanted to know about the biochemical medication that I was talking about the other day that sometimes can cause children to chew or bite. And you're absolutely allowed to ask whatever question that you want here. And what I was talking about was a methyl B12 shot. That's something that gets prescribed by a doctor. It is a biomedical intervention that is appropriate for some children if the doctor prescribes. But one of the side effects for some kids is that it does cause them to bite and chew. And you expressed that you might be interested in looking at getting your child healthy and biochemical intervention. That is a great question to ask, because we all want to make sure that our child is showing up as healthy as possible when they're starting treatment. There is an organization that is called MedMaps, MEDMAPS. NEAPS. They just had their convention here in Los Angeles last week, and they are an organization that is helping to train pediatricians and doctors to understand some of the specific medical issues that children on the autism spectrum will encounter. And so you can certainly start with looking at their website to see if there is a practitioner near you. Make sure that you talk to your local and more global support group to ask, is this a doctor that I really want to be working with? Because I will tell you that they are not all the same. And sometimes they are very expensive, and there are people there. When you ask other parents, they will tell you, this is somebody who's going to tell you it's my way or the highway. And if you're somebody who can work with that, bless you, I cannot. It's just such not a thing for me to do. There are other people who work more collaboratively, so make sure that you ask. And there are doctors who will specialize in different things. There are doctors who specialize in immunology. There are doctors who are psychologists who are trained. There are pediatrician, there's a sports medicine doctor. So it depends on what your area that you want to have looked at. There's gastroenterologists. So you want to consider what kind of a practitioner you want to go to, because what kinds of issues are you looking at? And then there are medical tests that they can run that are often covered by your insurance to see what kind of nutritional support and what kind of medical support your child needs to be the healthiest, so that they can come to their therapies the healthiest individual that they can be. And that's a really important thing to do. I will tell you that the things that these doctors have researched and know is so much more advanced than what you will find with your typical pediatrician. I have a great pediatrician, and I bring him stuff all the time and say, here's this new study, and he thanks me for it because it is stuff that largely he is not completely up to speed on. And he acknowledges that. I think that is a rare doctor. But if you're only looking at getting your child healthy on the autism spectrum with a pediatrician, and you feel like your child is not as healthy as they could be, then it is time to perhaps look at something like med maps. There used to be something called DAN doctors. They no longer exist, but some of those doctors, some of the MedMap doctors were DAN doctors. So I encourage you to look at that on the internet, and we'll talk more about that in a coming show. Emily's showing you some of the different ways you can get in touch with us. Tomorrow, very exciting day here. We have Ask Dr. Doreen first thing in the morning, and then in Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy, we're going to have Julie Kornack with us talking about some of the legislation that is coming up that you might be interested in. One in particular, a telehealth bill that could really use your support. So we'll be talking about that tomorrow when Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson joins us. So much to talk about the rest of this week, and we'll continue talking about challenging behavior. But if you have questions for Dr. Doreen Grandpichet, make sure that you're sending those into us overnight. We're out of time. I'll be back tomorrow, but until then, please give your kiddos a hug from me. Bye-bye for now.